Hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel Simply Medics. Please like, subscribe and share. So today we are going to discuss about the pharmacology of diuretic agents. We will start our discussion with the basic renal physiology, then we will talk a little about the renal autocytes, then we will go to the basic pharmacology of diuretic agents, in which we will deal with the classification of the diuretic agents, and we will talk about the different classes of diuretic agents one by one. Then we will go to the clinical pharmacology of diuretic agents. So first of all, let's talk about the basic renal physiology. We'll discuss about the different ion channels, co-transporters and transporters. Our main motto behind the discussion of the renal physiology is to easily understand the pharmacology of diuretic agents. As we all know that the urine is concentrated in the nephron with the help of the various ion channels and the transporters. So from the first part of the nephron, that is the proximal tubule, the reabsorption of sodium bicarbonate, sodium glucose co-transport, sodium chloride and the H2O takes place. And from the descending limb of loop of Henle, mainly the H2O is reabsorbed. And from the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle, mainly the potassium ion, calcium ion, magnesium ion, sodium ion and the chloride ions are reabsorbed. And from the third part of nephron, that is the DCD, the reabsorption of NaCl takes place, and the reabsorption of calcium ion also takes place with the help of hormone PTH. And from the collecting duct, the secretion of potassium ion and hydrogen ion takes place. The reabsorption of NaCl takes place with the help of aldosterone, and the reabsorption of H2O takes place with the help of ADH hormone. So let's talk about the reabsorption at the proximal tubule from the pharmacological point of view. Let's suppose this is the lumen, this is the cell, and this is the interstitium. From here, the main thing which is reabsorbed is the sodium bicarbonate. The reabsorption of sodium bicarbonate is initiated by the exchange of sodium with the hydrogen ion. This hydrogen ion then combines with the bicarbonate ion present in the lumen to form the carbonic acid very rapidly. This carbon this carbonic acid is then converted into H2O and CO2 with the help of this carbonic anhydrase enzyme which is present in the lumen. Then this carbon dioxide goes inside the cell by the simple diffusion method. It combines with the H2O and then form H2CO3 again with the help of the intracellular carbonic anhydrase enzyme. It is readily ionized into H plus ion and HCO3 minus ion. Then this bicarbonate ion goes into the interstitium with the transportation of the sodium ion. This is nothing but it is a sodium potassium ATPase pump. The chloride ion is also exchanged with some negatively charged alkalines. The glucose and the sodium ion are also co-transported with the help of sodium glucose transporter 2. After that, let's talk about the loop of Henle. Water is extracted from the descending limb by the osmotic forces found in the hypotonic medullary interstitium. And at the thick ascending limb, let's suppose this is the lumen, this is the cell, and this is the interstitium. At the luminal surface of the cell, a special type of transporter is found which is known as NK2Cl, which transports the sodium ion, the potassium ion, and the two molecules of chloride ions. This NK2Cl transporter and sodium potassium ATPase pump leads to the accumulation of potassium ion inside the cell. The back diffusion of this potassium into the tubular lumen causes a lumen positive electrical potential that provides a driving force for the reabsorption of cations, including the magnesium and the calcium, via the paracellular pathway. If this transporter is blocked by any drug, then the potassium ion will not increase inside the cell, then the potential will not increase in the lumen, then the magnesium and the calcium ions, that is the divalent cations, will not go to the interstitium. So the magnesium and calcium ion in the lumen will increase. It will lead to the excretion of divalent cations in the urine. These drugs are known as the loop diuretics. Then let's come to the DCT. Here the sodium and chloride ions are transported simultaneously by NCC, that is sodium chloride cotransporter. These NCC are sensitive to the thiazides. Also, the calcium is actually reabsorbed via an apical calcium ion channel and basolateral calcium sodium exchanger. This process is regulated by the PTH hormone. Then let's talk about the collecting duct. In the collecting duct, two types of cells are found: the principal cells and the intercalated cells. The principal cells are the major sites for the sodium, potassium, and water transport, and the intercalated cells, the alpha cells and beta cells, are the major site for the secretion of H plus and HCO3 minus ions respectively. In the principal cell, sodium is transported via epithelial sodium channel from lumen to the principal cell, and this sodium is then transported back to the interstitium with the help of sodium potassium ATPase pump. So in the lumen, the more negative electrical potential will generate, which leads to the chloride ion transportation through the paracellular transport pathway into the interstitium. And this negative potential will also induce the potassium ion to go from the principal cell to the lumen. The upstream diuretics will increase the sodium delivery to the lumen, that will increase the potassium secretion into the lumen. And if the delivery of the bicarbonate ion increases, uh, which is not able to transport paracellularly, then it will also lead to the increase in the potassium ion secretion. In the case of volume depletion, when aldosterone secretion increases, which leads to the more reabsorption of sodium coupled with the more secretion or the loss of potassium ion. In addition to their role in control of sodium absorption and potassium secretion, principal cells also contain a regulated system for water channels. Antidiuretic hormone controls the permeability of these cells to water by regulating the insertion of preformed aquaporins, that is the AQP2, into the apical membrane. The ADH receptor or vasopressin receptor found in the brain is V1 receptor, and the receptor found in the principal cells are the V2 receptors. In the absence of ADH, the aquaporins will not form and the water will not be absorbed, so the urine formed will be diluted. So with this, we have completed the first part of our discussion. So now by moving forward, we are going to discuss the renal autocoids. Autocoids are nothing but the paracrine factors. In renal autocoids, we will discuss three major autocoids: the adenosine, prostaglandins, and some peptides. Adenosine is an unphosphorylated ribonucleoside which increases in case of hypoxia and ATP consumption. In most of the tissues, what happens? The hypoxia results in the compensatory vasodilatations, and if the cardiac output is sufficient, then the blood flow increases. The kidney has different requirements because the increased blood flow leads to an increased GFR and the greater sodium or solute delivery to the tubules. This will increase the tubule work and the ATP consumption will be more. In contrast, in the hypoxic kidney, the adenosine actually decreases the blood flow and the GFR. There are four different adenosine receptors: A1, A2A and A2B, and A3. All are found in the kidney, but the most important is the A1. The A1 receptors are found in the afferent arteriole as well as in the PCT and most other tubule segments. The A1 affects the ion transport of PCT, TAL, and the collecting tubules. In addition, the A1 receptors present on the afferent arteriole reduces the blood flow, and the GFR. The adenosine antagonists have been found to block the sodium hydrogen exchanger activity. So the adenosine antagonist shows the diuretic activity, and it does not cause the wasting of potassium ion. So the adenosine is done. Now we will learn about the renal prostaglandins. 5 prostaglandin subtypes: PGE2, PGI2, PGD2, PGF2 alpha, and the thromboxane TXA2 are synthesized in the kidney and have receptors in these organs. PGE2 has shown the activity of certain diuretics. It decreases the sodium ion reabsorption in the thick ascending limb of Henle's loop, and it also decreases the ADH mediated water transport in collecting tubules. These actions of PGE2 contributes significantly to the diuretic efficacy of loop diuretics. This is the reason why the blockade of prostaglandin synthesis with NSAIDs can interfere with the loop diuretics. So with this we are done with the renal prostaglandins. Now let's come towards the peptides, that is the natriuretic peptides like ANP, BNP and CNP. ANP and BNP are synthesized in the heart, and the CNP comes primarily from the CNS. A fourth natriuretic peptide, urodilate, is synthesized and function only in the kidney. The urodilate is made in the DCT epithelial cells and blunts the sodium ion reabsorption through the effects on sodium uptake channels and sodium potassium ATPase pump. It also reduces the glomerular afferent and increases the glomerular efferent tone, which is the vascular effect of natriuretic peptides. These effects causes an increase in GFR, which adds to the natriuretic activity. The ANP and BNP increases the GFR through effects on glomerular arteriolar vasomotor tone, and also exhibit the diuretic activity. The CNP has less diuretic activity. 3 agents in this group, nesiritide, carperitide, ularitide, are in a clinical use or under investigation, which is not important to remember. So with this, we have finished the second part of our discussion. Thank you so much for watching our video on the diuretics. If you liked our video, then please share and subscribe our channel Simply Medics for more videos, and please click on the bell icon to get notification of new videos. And if you have any doubts and for feedback, please let us know in the comment. Thank you.